gender identity, I don't really know what to call it. I want to be politically correct, kind of, but not step on anyone's toes, but also be real about it. And we're going to talk about how this stuff really affects Black people in the end, but some of the narratives and some of the things that are being pushed in our direction. And it is, I labeled the title of this video, is Gender Wars the New, is it the fight over racism, right? Like, so when we saw during the election cycle, we saw a lot of push of race, like how Trump and the Trump supporters are racist and how all these people are racist and the Proud Boys going to come kill you in your sleep and all of this stuff. But now we have shifted from that narrative and gotten away from the Black Lives Matter, gotten away from all the things that we saw during the election cycle, how much Black people mattered and how much we care about the Black vote and the Black agenda. And now we've gotten into this gender war crisis, guys. So I want to talk to you both we have Tony Lindsay, a brilliant film director, and T. Abdul Khalik, just a brilliant young mind. And we're here to talk about, has the identity war, or whatever it's called, taken place? Has it replaced white supremacy in the eyes of the media? Is that the new, like, what we're going to get people riled up about, the gender wars and the gender identity wars? So, Tony, I'm going to go to you first. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing right now with all the gender wars and all the things that are taking place?
Well, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these conversations always kind of devolve into things that always end up distracting us from the important conversation that needs to take place in this country. I think, unfortunately, many of these social movements, feminism, LGBTQ, and even the Black Lives Matter movement, to an extent, they're very hostile in practice to the Black family structure. And, we can debate about the intentions of these movements all day long, but we can't deny the end results of these movements that always seem to impact the Black family adversely. So I'm looking forward to getting into this conversation and talking with you brothers. And I'll defer to you for now.
Definitely. T. So I brought up something at the beginning, and I know you're really strong on, symbolism and the things that are pushed to our community. But now it seems like instead of fighting against white supremacy, we know that there's like a reparations bill or whatever, that they're going to study reparations, even though we know reparations being owed, but they're kind of putting that to the back burner. And it seems like a lot of our politicians and a lot of the media outlets are focusing on how transgenders are being mistreated, how they're not being treated fairly, and all of these things. What are your thoughts on all this stuff that you've been seeing?
No, I totally agree. First of all, I don't believe that there's ever going to be an effort from either political party unless we push them to push for the well-being of the Black community. Because when you have an independent Black community, like I said, independent Black community can function itself, and then we can build power in institutions. So, you want to pay Black people lip service. Now, this whole gender identity thing is designed to divide Black people, because now you have Black people saying that I'm both gay and I'm both Black, so therefore I got two strikes against me. They say things like Black heterosexual males. Like, there's an article on the Root literally that says Black heterosexual males are the white people of Black people. And notice how they throw in straight males as if we have control over our community. Black men have we can't create any laws against Black gays or Black women. We don't have that institutional power at all. But yeah, so that's designed to separate Black men, Black women, Black gays, and have us all fighting each other instead of united under one cause of us being Black. So yeah, that's the problem, and that is what's going to be going on for the next 4 years. And whatever victory that the LGBT community gets, what they're going to do is they're going to say, hooray for Black LGBT people, because the Black LGBT people have it hard. So this is a victory for the Black community in general. And that's what's going to happen going forward.
I definitely I agree with you on a lot of that, man, because now I want to share my screen and show you guys some of the headlines. Now, obviously, you've seen some of them before because they're in some of the chats that we're in. But I mean, I don't want to make fun of anybody, and I don't want to be, I don't want to be insensitive or whatever. But some of these headlines we have to pay attention to and kind of dissect a little bit. Demi Lovato, who's a famous singer and's been all over these media outlets, is now saying that gender reveal parties are transphobic. That seems to be like the trigger word right now. Tony, what's your thoughts on some of these trigger words that are being used as far as like transphobia and some of the ways that's being pushed upon Black folks in particular?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the easiest way to bully people into silence. That's how I always look at it. Whenever you attach, phobia, or you're a radical leftist, you're a Trump supporter, that's how they bully people into conformity. And most people, you're afraid to give your opinion or speak your truth because we're afraid of being publicly castigated. So what we do is we just diminish ourselves and we walk away from the truth as we know it. It's the same concept behind historical terms like nigger lover. You know what I'm saying? Whenever you attach a label to someone, it makes it much easier to control their actions and even their opinions. People, their fear of being labeled, it's exactly what terrifies them into silence.
No, you're absolutely right. And like you said, and the thing is, I was talking to Tony before we started this broadcast. Once again, we're talking about some of the media and how the gender identity and the gender wars is now kind of supplanted the fight against racism, the fight against white supremacy. That's kind of what I'm seeing since the turn of the election. Like, it's ironic. Take me into this. Isn't it kind of ironic that a lot of this transphobic and a lot of this rhetoric is being used since the November elections and since Joe Biden was sworn in January? Like, do you think that's a coincidence?
No. These policies are a distraction from real policies for the Democrats to tackle for Americans, such as, economic relief for COVID. Instead, when you have these cultural wars, you can literally divert what's needed for the country for these stupid battleground issues to keep the country divided. Just like, Joe Biden, I believe, his administration launched an airstrike in Syria. Yeah. And the problem with this is that Russia is in Syria. So if Russia, if any of the Russian facilities, any Russian dies in Syria, that could lead to conflict within the United States and Russia. But instead of talking about the problems with that, and, maybe the United States will pull out of these foreign wars, focus on home. We're at home battling transgenders. And now what's going on in Congress that the Democrats passed is they're pushing a bill, and they call it the Equality Act, but but people don't look at the details inside. This bill will allow trans women, which are biological men, to legally, under the civil rights law, go into women's facilities. Okay, we're talking about women's bathrooms. We're talking about women's prison. We're talking about women's sports. Yep. A trans woman, which is a biological male, is always more than likely 9 times out of 10 is going to perform better than a biological woman. And lastly, this gender issue is designed to divide the Black family. When the Black man and woman cannot come on accord on one page, there will be division, fight, and family dysfunction.
Everybody profits. I mean, everybody benefits from Black dysfunction. I mean, let's think about it. That's the way that society's set up. And to your point, T, when you were talking about, these civil rights laws that are being passed, the funny thing about it is, like, they're trying to, this is all piggybacking off of the civil rights laws that were originally written for Black Americans. This is what this is. Like, these laws were specifically structured and created for the benefit of Black enslaved people in this country. And if we haven't even tackled that issue yet, right, there's no real tangible discussion on reparations or any type of restorative policies to integrate Black people into the economic model of this country. So if we haven't even touched on that, but we're modifying things here and there in order to, accommodate for people based on their sexual preferences and other issues, it's like, how long are we going to keep ignoring the big elephant that's in the room that everybody continues to ignore throughout this entire process?
No, absolutely. Go T. Did you have something to say? I think
you're on mute, brother. You're on mute, man.
I think your mic's on mute, T.
I'm on mute. Okay, I apologize. Is that better? Can y'all?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, the other problem is I feel like our black struggle, our unique black history is actually used to push other groups. Because if you look at Representative Al Green, he made a statement in Congress. It says, he says to the transgender rights, because a lot of the Republicans were opposing the Equality Act because they're like, no, we're not going to allow these biological males into women's facilities. And then Al Green, a black man, said, you use God to enslave my four parents. You use God to segregate me in schools. You use God to put me in the back of the bus. Have you no shame? Pretty much using drawing an equivalence within black people who are born black, which we cannot change. There's nothing that we can change about black versus a sexual preference or, something going on in your head that you think you are something and you're really something else. But that's the problem I have, is that black people, as sadly our sellouts in Congress, are using our struggle to promote everyone else while still being left behind. They should be angry that black people, 90% put Joe Biden in office, and yet the number one thing for this administration is the sexual gender nonsense rights while we're still being ignored.
Absolutely.
I want to say something. You see what you have right there on the screen?
Yes.
I just wanted to say, look at that sentence right there. Let's be clear. Transgender equality is the civil rights issue of our time. There is no real room for compromise when it comes to basic human rights. Let's change the word transgender to African American.
And this is a tweet put out by, so for those of you who don't know, we're showing on the screen a tweet put out by the official Joe Biden Twitter page. You see the blue check up here. You see the United States government official flag. So this is not fake news. This is not something we created. This is not something we're using against Joe Biden. This is something that he and his team put out on January 26th. This is something that he and his team put out. And so when T and Tony are talking about the civil rights issues and the things that are being used against us, this is what they're talking about. This is not something that they're creating. This is not something we're manufacturing. This is something that's being put in the forefront to being used and being compared to, like you said, something that we're being born of. We've been born black. It's incredible.
But here's the thing about that. You see how you just put that on the screen where he said that. And the reason why I said, okay, replace that with the word black or with African American. You see what he just put there is accompanied by what comes after that? Policy, right?
Yes.
Policy comes after that. So put African. Can we argue that black people, that African descendants of slaves in this country are not, we don't fit into that exact same sentence? Where's the policy to follow that? So how can you argue that, transgender issues are not being utilized as a replacement for black issues? And that's why I always say that, the struggle of black people in this country has always been used as a footstool for other social movements that always end up ignoring us in the end. We always fall to the background of those movements in ideology or in practice, but we're often tossed in the front line, right on the front line, to spearhead those movements.
And now, T, I want to talk to you about this. Once again, I'm talking to T. Khalik and Tony Lindsay. We're talking about a lot of this transgender wars that are going on and the ambush and how it affects the black community. So if you can, just be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, so we can push this out. These are conversations you're not going to see on television. Now, T, I want to talk to you specifically about how they're used. You see these things and you see this rhetoric, but how is this used against, you kind of touched on it, but how is this used directly against the black man? Because a lot of times we're told we're insensitive. We're told that it's toxic masculinity if it's something that we don't agree with. You mentioned the using of women's facilities for transgender women who are born biological men. That is not something I will not ever feel comfortable with my mom, my little sister, my woman being in the same environment, using the same bathrooms, changing their clothes, doing all these things in front of people who may have, I know they identify one way, but they were born another way. That's not something I won't ever really feel totally comfortable with. But how is that type of thinking that I'm having going to be used and currently being used against our people?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, these are foreign ideas introduced to the black community. This is first world problems that white people talk about. So black men, especially instinctively, we want to protect our children. You know, we especially want to protect our girls. We want to protect our women as well. So instinctually, we don't want a man, a grown man, in the bathroom with our young girls. We also want to celebrate our girls when they do good in sports, if that's our own daughter. We don't want them to have unfair competition. Likewise, if they get locked up, sadly, we don't want them to be locked up with another biological male, because regardless, they still are male, and, you know, they still have male instincts. So what this does is this nullifies that natural protection mechanism of black men speaking up, trying to hold the family structure together. Instead, when we talk up on these things, and none of us is saying, and I have to make this clear, because, you know, a liberal could watch this video and say this is nothing but a bunch of transphobes. Nobody on this panel is saying hunt and kill trans people. No one is saying kill them. You know, no one is saying don't let them get jobs. You know, if they want to apply for a job, no one is saying that. What we're saying is biologically, you should not mix men and women in private women facilities, because the man can dominate that. So yes, that is designed to shut us up, take away that protection mechanism away from black men, and really destroy our family structure. And we have to speak up against that. And one more thing, you know, even if you look at the black celebrity class, they're silent on this, or afraid to speak about this. Even on black radio, no one says anything about it. I don't know if you guys remember Malik Yoba on The Breakfast Club, and what they were saying when they said gender doesn't matter. They said your private genitals don't mean anything. That don't mean you're a man or woman. And you look at The Breakfast Club, they were quiet, and I understand why they were quiet, because they were fearful that if they challenged that, they will be seen as transphobes. And this is a problem.
That's the issue I talk about, with the fear of being labeled and being castigated, which in many cases it threatens your money, you know, especially the people in certain positions of notoriety and fame. But at what point do us, like do regular people, at what point do we find our own voices and we start pushing back a little bit? Because if we don't start pushing back against some of these narratives, we're just going to be accepting anything. Because I really feel like we're in an era of just complete lunacy. When someone can put up a post like the one Demi Lovato put out, where it's saying that, you know, gender reveal parties that celebrate your child, oh, it's a boy, it's a girl, that's transphobic. So now you're trying to tell people that they cannot even identify or celebrate that they're having a boy or a girl. This is about these people are trying to create a genderless, asexual world that it's really scary. It's like a lot of the things that I see on social media today, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Tony, did we lose Tony? Think we might have lost. T, can you hear Tony?
Yeah. I mean, hey, I just want to quickly jump up what he was saying. You know, black people, we must protect our identity. You know, one of the problems I'm seeing is that we love to lend our sufferings to other groups. And if you look, other groups don't do the same thing. And there's one group in particular that if you even so much as compare their experience to someone else's experience, you will get canceled. And that's I have to give them kudos. That's the Jewish group. You cannot compare World War II, Nazi Holocaust to what black people have went through. If you do that, if you try to do that, they will come after you and cancel you.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? It's, and it's the same thing with that Gina Carano lady. I don't know if you know who she is. If any of you guys watch a Disney Plus show called The Mandalorian, yeah. Gina Carano, I forget what character, but she's that warrior female on there. Mm-hmm. But she got fired from Disney. She has conservative views. But what got her fired is that she compared how the media treated conservatives the same way to how Nazis treated the Jews. And she said that the media first demonized the Jews, which got regular Germans to hate their Jewish neighbors. So what she said is the media is doing the same thing, demonizing conservatives to get, their conservative neighbors to hate them. They fired her for that. They said that's anti-Semitic. With the quickness. They're not playing you're not going to sit there and compare our tragedies to yours. Black people have to do that. We have to stop lending our trauma to other groups because they're not doing the same thing. This is why Jews get things specifically done for them. We call everyone racist, right? But how come when you say something about Jews, you're not a racist, you're anti-Semitic, completely outside, completely different.
They have their own word.
Everyone else goes to.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how uniquely they get things done uniquely because they're not doing that kumbaya stuff like we're doing. They're like, no, we have unique issues that need to be uniquely addressed. This is something that African Americans must do.
I think a lot of that is largely tied into this collective low self-esteem that we have as a people, where it's like we feel like we need to be accepted by other people, into their movement. It's like to be validated somehow. We have to be integrated into other people's movements. It's like it's like we view everything in society today, politics, or just everything. We view it as if we have to always choose sides, like even with politics, like this hyper partisan lens. We have to be conservative or we have to be liberal, Democrat, Republican. Like there are people out there who are critical thinkers, people that think independently of, the what's typically going on socially. And I think black people have conservative views. Black people have liberal, progressive views. You know what I'm saying? So you can't put us in a box. So we have to get out of that mindset where we're going to be on team A or team B. That's where I think that we usually fall into the majority of our problems. This low self-esteem that makes us think that we can't do anything for ourselves or be accepted or achieve anything unless we decide which master to deal with.
No, it's absolutely right. It's Tony, you're into the stock market. It's like you're not allowed to diversify. Like right. You're like, in stocks and in finance, you're allowed to diversify your portfolio and put some money over here, put some money over here. Like, oh, I like the way that company's going. I like the direction of this company. But black folks, we have to be all in on being a liberal and all in on being a Democrat, because if you're not, it used to be you were a Trump supporter, you hate black people, you were Uncle Tom, you're a coon or whatever. And now it seems to be, oh, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, you're all of these things, you're anti-Semitic or whatever. Anytime that you get out of line or you speak up and say, nah, man, I don't think it is right. Like, I don't think a little child should get to choose if they're a boy or a girl. Like, I don't think it's okay if you're allowed to genetically mess with, your whatever, or not get consent. And I'm saying all of this because I'm going to show a clip, you guys, from it was a meeting on the Senate floor. And Rand Paul, who's a senator in Kentucky, challenged Joe Biden's HHS pick, Dr. Rachel Levine, who was a trans woman, right? So he's a trans woman. And Rand Paul asked Levine whether she thought it was okay if minors were allowed to, basically allowed to pick what gender they are. And Levine kind of, tap dances around the question. I'm going to play the clip. I'm not going to play it in its entirety, but I'm going to play some of it. And I just want to get you guys' thoughts on it.
Genital mutilation has been nearly universally condemned. Genital mutilation has been condemned by the WHO, the United Nations Children's Fund.
Can you hear it?
You may have to turn it up.
Okay. You might not be able to hear, but okay. So we'll have to figure that out later. But one thing that what he was saying was he was calling it genital mutilation, and that's what everybody focused on. But his bigger picture was, is it okay for a minor without the consent of their parent to be able to mess with their bodies? And he used an example of someone that he knew that decided to change their body. They were a woman and wanted to, do the transgender process and go into a man to become a man. And then they regretted it when they got older, but they did it at a very young age. So I kind of want to get you guys' opinion on, what is your thoughts on some of these things? And this is Joe Biden's, this is going to be appointed. She is going to be appointed to a seat in the DC, and she refused to answer whether she thought it was okay if minors should be allowed to basically change their identities without the consent of their parents.
I know I'll go on the record right now and say that is unequivocally child abuse. You cannot. It's ridiculous to say that you can entrust a child to make a lifelong permanent decision about themselves at the age of 5, 6, 10, 14, 15, or even 16. Like, that's ridiculous to me. I mean, we have rules that are set in place for where kids, where you can drink, where you can vote, where you can smoke, where you can do all of these things. But you're saying you can decide as a biological boy that you are a girl at what first grade level or fifth grade, middle school, whatever it is. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, parents are here for a reason. It's like, are we just trying to like remove parents from society? Are we trying to eliminate mothers and fathers and their responsibilities to rear their children? I mean, didn't they just change the rules in Congress where there's no more reference to gender in any of the policies or any legislation? They removed the word mother, father, man, woman, all of these things. Like, why are we suddenly as a society hostile to biological fact? Why are we hostile to that? And I just want to tell you a quick story about something that happened with my son. My son, he's gone. I've had him in private school his whole life, and he just started going to public school. And in his ELA class, I gotta you get a notification on how he's doing in his grades. And I saw in one of the things in his ELA class, it said LGBT something. I was like, okay, well, got his little score. Then I saw another one, LGBT something. So I asked him about it. Well, and he said, oh yeah, Dad, they've been giving us a lot of education on LGBTQ and the meanings and the this and the that. So one of his tests, he got a 9 out of 10. So I said, what'd you get wrong? And here's the question that he got wrong. If a woman who identifies as a man is attracted to women, is that person heterosexual or homosexual? My son gave the answer homosexual. He was marked wrong, and he was told that the correct answer is heterosexual. He was told that gender is not a biological construct, but a social construct. So now you're indoctrinating our children now. You're telling them that they have to deny science. So, like, what happens when he gets to biology class? Like, how are you going to figure that out? How do you resolve that?
I mean, apparently, if you do, the blue pixie dust or the pink pixie dust, that's transphobic, right? Like that goes into what Rand Paul's saying is like, how, like, because that's what Demi Lovato said. But Rand Paul's like, how can you can't choose your gender? Now you can choose to alter your gender when you're of age, but you at least got to be of age, right? Like you at least have to be of age. That's all he was trying to get out of Rachel Levine and Dr. Levine, but she wasn't even willing to say that. Because like you said, you have to be of age to buy alcohol. You have to be of age to smoke tobacco. You have to be of age to do all of these other things, but some reason you don't have to be of age to choose your gender. Like that to me, it doesn't make any sense. Does it make any sense to you, T?
No, absolutely. And, if we're going to go down that route, you might as well say Rachel Dolezal is a black woman. She's always felt that she was a black woman all her life, and if she gets the surgery to get her skin pigment changed, we should see her as a black woman. But see, that's the idiocy that we are dealing with. It's just that I don't understand that if someone's exterior, their outside, not their biological makeup, but their outside, can make them the opposite sex. It almost trivializes sex. It almost says that we are only men because of our exterior. Nothing biological about our makeup, nothing about our upper body being strong, nothing about our ability to produce sperm or like a woman's ability to have a uterus. None of that matters. It's if you go to the doctor and they operate on you and make you look like that opposite sex, you are that sex. And that's just intellectually dishonest. And this dysfunction is designed to break up families and create chaos. And, the hypocrisy of this, and what's frightening about this is I'm fearing that if this passes into law, this conversation that we're having can be deemed by YouTube as hate speech and censoring it because it goes against the Civil Rights Act. And, you know, just to give an example of the hypocrisy of this, I don't know if you know this congresswoman. Her name is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a conservative. Yes. She was going hard against this. And then there's another congresswoman named, I believe her name is Debbie Newman. So what Debbie Newman does is she goes on Twitter and she creates a video saying that I'm gonna go ahead and put a transgender flag outside of my office, which is right across from Marjorie Taylor Greene office, so that every time she walks by, she can know trans people exist. And I just have a problem with that trans people exist thing, because no one is saying that they don't exist. Whatever. So then what Marjorie Taylor Greene does is she says, okay, I'm going to put a sign outside of my office that says there are only two genders. Respect the science or trust the science. Don't you know the media went hard on her, saying that she is being hostile to Debbie Newman. And it's like, wait a minute, are y'all not seeing that this woman intentionally put the flag outside, the transgender flag outside, to entice her? Yet she responds and she's being hit on the head for defending herself. Yeah. This is the ridiculousness. This is like the forceful programming. I don't want to debate science. I don't want to debate anything. You think like me or else you are this. Yep. This is a problem. And one last thing for black men especially. Look at what they're doing to our black boys. Like, I don't know if you know that actor Charlize Theron. You know, why does she adopt a young black boy and make him a transgender? Like,
I think she's been arrested for that.
Exactly. She said the boy told her at 3 years old that he wanted to be a girl. So then she seriously took at 3 years old, I wanted to be a turtle. You know, my parents didn't strap some hard case, biologically strap some hard case surgically on my back and impede me so I could cross so to be a turtle. You're 3. You don't understand that. But you have a liberal-minded, just a far liberal-minded parent who wants to do kudos. Well, you know what? I'm going to now put you on hormones. You don't know if he really wants to be that. She should be criminalized. Yep. But that's what they're doing to our black men. The same way with Dwayne Wade. So, like, I'm not criticizing, but I'm just like, why are you putting your son as a prop, Dwayne Wade? Why are you telling the world that your son's a transgender? Why are you doing that? All you're doing, you're just propping out your own child just for pats on the back by white people. So I don't like this trend that they're doing young black boys like this. And maybe because we're too masculine and they want to emasculate us.
Maybe. That's what it is, brother.
No, so this is the image of Charlie Theron, and this was so Tariq, you're telling me that this is a little boy. Like this is a little boy that is dressed up like this. This is what because I don't know much about Charlie Theron, but so you're telling me this is actually a little boy.
I believe the oldest. Now I don't know if she has 2 boys. I have to check. I know the oldest because she said when the oldest was 3. So this
child right here is a little boy.
Yeah, I thought it was 2 boys. I thought she was dressed.
Yeah, you know what? That other one could be a little boy too. I have to really take a look at that. I would not.
Now that is mind blowing to me. That is I you couldn't tell me this wasn't a child that was born a girl, and that is scary. I mean, I hate to say that that's pretty scary. I'm not afraid to say that
it's wrong.
I can't believe that. I can't imagine, like you said. I mean, at 5 years old, I wanted to be Spider-Man, right? Like I don't mean my parents should go out and let spiders bite me. You know what I mean? And like try to get me to turn into Spider-Man. Like that is just I think that is pretty insane. That's
why children are children and adults are adults. You know, you can't allow children to make adult decisions. So I think that in itself, it's insanity. And the more we stand by, you know, the more rope we give them, the more they're going to take. At what point are people going to just wake up and just stop and say, you know what, this is too much? You know when they're going to do that? When it's too late.
That yeah, I mean that kind of like touched me, man. Like that, because that's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. Now I want to touch on, we were talking about Rand Paul because he is someone that has been very, Rand Paul, you can hate him, you can love him or whatever. Like it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But what he's saying on this issue, I think a lot, we would agree. Now, what he was saying is basically that you can't allow like children to make those decisions. But and he's been firm on this, but we don't see any black versions of Rand Paul. Not to say you should be black and take all of Rand Paul's, like his decision making and stand with all of his policies, but aren't any black men that are coming out and saying, "Oh, this shit ain't right. Like this shit ain't cool." Besides, at that level, we have our black men that are using, like T said earlier in the broadcast, they're using scriptures to justify this, or saying that the Bible was used to treat black folks like this, right? Like, so instead of speaking out against this type of, I'm gonna just call it, some of it's nonsense, some of this nonsense. Instead, we have folks that are actually defending allowing children to change their genders. Tony, why does it, I know we touched on it a little bit, but why isn't there any of the mainstream media or any of the people on Capitol Hill or all of these people, these black folks that Joe Biden has appointed to his cabinet and to put in the high positions, why aren't they going against this? Like, this seems kind of insane.
It's about the bag. At the end of the day, it's about the bag. Like, we have to remember that a lot of black men in particular are barred from certain positions of perceived power and wealth unless they acquiesce, unless they conform, unless they fall in line. And that's the problem. The fact that we believe that we have to always navigate through the systems that have been laid out for us through white supremacy. Well, so-called white supremacy, because I don't believe I have a problem with that term, white supremacy. Mm-hmm. But I just think that as long as we continue to attach ourselves to their systems and their institutions, we're always gonna have to kowtow and bow down and fall in line to what they want, to for their definitions of black people or what's acceptable as a black person for this position. That's why you see most of the platforms that castigate black men publicly, they usually are headed by black women. The face of that is usually black women that speak very hostile towards black men. There's a reason for this. So, there's barely any presence of black men anyway in like the mainstream media, in even in the political spectrum as well. I just don't think that you're going to really find that woke, conscious black man in any of those positions, because the prerequisite to that position is you cannot be that way. So we need to stop looking there, and we got to start looking to each other.
Well, they only act woke, and I say that, especially when they want to go hard, is politically. And when they go really hard at the Republicans and what, the Proud Boys are, then you see people like, T.I., people like Snoop Dogg, getting really amped up and getting really woke. But then when the liberals approach Snoop Dogg for trying to defend Kobe Bryant, and he did kind of go hard on
Gayle King.
Gayle King. I don't agree with that. I think he should have said, I don't mean to say that, but I stand by what I said. But you see how Snoop Dogg apologized really quickly, just got whipped, just like that. And it goes to what you said, brother. Black people, we don't own our own institutions, and we're constantly, and this is the problem that I really get frustrated. We're constantly complaining. Why don't you guys include black people more? We need more black people here. So when you do that, okay, fine. When you do that, those black people are going to have to take on wherever their boss tells them to do. They cannot be pro-black. We seen what happened with Nick Cannon, where he tried to be black. Bam, they shut that down. He does not have his own. He does not have his own program, his institutions to speak freely the way he wants. So we got to get out of this mentality. The one thing I love about this platform is we do talk about black people owning their own. If we don't do that, black men are not going to be able to speak out. And if they do, it's in these fake woke terms. It's in a way that doesn't rattle the establishment, they say the things they're supposed to say. You know, I'm against homophobia, transphobia, and all that nonsense. It's just, it's weak. But yeah, this is why black men aren't speaking out. Is because their employers, their masters, aren't allowing them to.
They're only allowed to speak in platitudes. And when they do get nice and woke and conscious publicly, you know, what's the end result? We get Black Lives Matter streets. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of
or on
the
the
day,
basketball court. Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, it's like the difference between being an employee and an employer, a business owner. It's like we're going knocking on the door every day. Can you please hire me? You need to hire me. Let me in. Give me a job so I can work for you. But you're not even thinking about building your own business so you can bring other people in. So that's why I think one of the good byproducts of this pandemic response has been, I've seen a huge surge in Black entrepreneurship. I see a lot of Black people discovering their talents and their business acumen. So just based off of that alone, you know, I am encouraged to see that there are so many more Black people who are of a mindset of generating their own income and being more economically independent. We just now got to learn how to detach ourselves from, you know, these other groups who are pimping us. They're basically just pimping us at the end of the day. So once we learn that, you know, we'll see that we even have more freedom to use our own voices. Because, you know, listen, me at the end of the day, I'm going to say what I want to say whenever I want to say it. But I know that my wealth isn't tied to certain systems. So there's no freedom that you will ever experience, you know, like being your own boss, owning your own business, being able to speak your own words. Because, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not beholden to white people. So I can say whatever I want to say because I'm free.
Absolutely.
And I just want to
go ahead,
what the brother said. He said something really key when he said, you know, a lot of these Black outlets ran by Black women bash Black men. You know, when you look at outlets like The Root, that, you know, that is owned by Univision. You know, that is not a Black company, but what they do is that they hire these Black heads, mostly Black feminists, because Black feminists, unfortunately, you know, got their talking points from white feminists, and they take whatever issues that they have with the white man and throw it on the Black man as if we have this patriarchal power that's suppressing our women. And what that is specifically designed to do is to create a gender war. Because you got to understand, if Black men see themselves being attacked by these outlets, and sadly they're seeing it's a lot of our women, that may develop some animosity against our women. And then now they're going to go online on social medias lashing out on Black women. And then now some Black women who really weren't paying attention to that, they're seeing the Black men go after them. Now they're going to go after them. And it creates this gender war. That's what this is designed to do, is create dysfunction, gender war, more single baby mamas and all that nonsense going on in our community. And there's nothing bringing us together. Nothing in the Black community talks about the importance of a man, woman, and child. We don't have none of that in our community at all.
And a lot of times,
go ahead,
Tony. You know, a lot of times, like, if you look, remember the Black Lives Matter homepage had the destruction of the nuclear family, so it goes directly against what you were saying. Like you said, there's nothing that says man, woman, child, dog, or man, woman, child. Now it's maybe woman, woman, or whatever. And not to say that that's wrong, but I don't know if that's not something that should be on the forefront or should be on the mainstream, or something that we should be pushing against man, woman, child. Like that, there's nothing wrong with being a man, a woman, and child. Once again, I'm talking to Tony Lindsay and Tariq Abdul Khalik. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Tony, was there something that you had to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say what's interesting about this, you know, if you really step back and look at it, I feel like all of these movements are usually controlled and operated by white people who don't even really participate in these movements outwardly like we do when we're following behind them. It's like they're saying, here you go. This is what I want you to do. Go ahead and do it. Like you got, you know, white women who are really controlling like the Me Too movement and the feminist movement and the you know, this whole transgender. Like there's a lot of white people behind this stuff, right? And a lot of these movements, they are anti-Black male. Whenever we talk about patriarchy, we somehow, you know, scapegoat patriarchy to black men who hold no real power or influence in this society. But you just completely ignoring white men, because white men are the ones who are the patriarchs of this society. But it's much easier for Me Too movements and the feminist movement to demonize and scapegoat everything to black men. And it once again plays on that self-esteem. And the worst part about it is that these movements, while they're controlled by white women, they're often carried out. And listen, I love my black women, but they always tend to be carried out by black women by proxy. You know what I'm saying? It's the perfect formula, because once the black women are talking crap about black men, the black men get offended, the black men got something to say about the black women, and then now we're here fighting, and then you got the puppet master at the top who's pulling the strings, just sitting back and collecting all the dough from all of this, all of the bread, because there is a lot of financial benefit that comes from the dysfunction of the black community in this society, from the music industry to politics to anything. Black dysfunction is a very powerful income generating model in this country. So we need to identify that and stop playing their game, because at the end of the day, we are the resource. We are the source that basically moves this society. And when we understand that, maybe we'll probably be a little more likely to kind of step up and say, you know what, let us take control of our own narratives.
Once again, I'm talking to Tony Lindsay and Tariq Abdul Khalik. These are two intelligent brothers. I encourage you all to share this to your social media, because these aren't conversations that you're going to see on CNN or ABC or NBC. These are really, these are things that affect our community. I encourage you to hit the thumbs up button so we can get pushed out. We're building Black-owned media. But another thing, I want to backtrack a little bit. Tariq, you talked about some of the laws and some of the bills that are being pushed that promote a transgender woman, which are technically biological men, to be in women's athletics, right? So Rand Paul, which we keep going back to him because he's someone in Washington that is like on the forefront. You can hate or love Rand Paul, but some of these concepts that he are talking about makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to most people. I'm not gonna say all people, but most people. And one of the things he talked about as far as he referred to them as biological men being in women's sports is that it will essentially eliminate women's sports. It'll take away women from being able to compete in the sports level. But I want to pose this to you guys, and I want Tariq for you to go first. Doesn't that that's a direct conflict to feminism, right? We push feminism and how women need equal rights and all of these things, that they need to be able to compete as far as like in the job field and athletics and all of these different things. We see, at least in the sports, if we're sticking with sports, how they want to get equal pay and all of this stuff. But if you have what he referred to as biological men being in your athletics, you're going to essentially push out the biological women. Isn't that like a conflict of interest? T, I want to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, yes. And you know what? They don't even respect. There are some women feminists and lesbians, like take, for example, J.K. Rowling. She wrote the Harry Potter books. And, of course, she's a bleeding heart liberal. She doesn't like conservatives and everything. But she is very much against transgenders enrolling on women's spaces. And they are attacking that woman as a transphobe, calling her all types of names, to the point, if you look at her Twitter page, she used to just be like conservatives, bad, bad, bad. She doesn't say it anymore, because now she's saying is that the side that she supports is actually trying to take away women's rights. So they don't even respect women who speak out against it. And yes, if you pass a bill like this, somebody's son could just be like, you know what? I'm failing at basketball. I'm doing horrible at basketball. Why not just say I'm a woman, a girl, and play in female basketball sports? And then what that does is, now that you're dominating a woman, you take away the young girl's ability to get scholarships into colleges, because you're the one dominating them, and you can't discriminate. You can't look over that transgender, because then that's discrimination. So yes, that will essentially kill women's sports. Women who fight in MMA or wrestle. What are we going to do? We're going to allow a trans women to fight them? Have y'all heard about Fallon Fox? Fallon Fox, at first, when she was fighting MMA, didn't tell nobody she was a transgender. Beating the snot out of women. then comes out and says she's a trans woman. What happened is when the women found out, they were very upset. A lot of them were boycotted. They didn't fight her anymore. Of course, the media and the LGBT community are calling those women transphobes and completely ignoring the biological reality. But that's what's happening. Like, you cannot have a man fight a woman like that, compete against a woman. There's not enough science out yet to make a man completely equal to a woman biologically by introducing hormones. It's just not there yet. But that's where we're going. And I'm telling you, man, I think they're doing this to create more dysfunction so we can never unify against what's really going on with our community. This is just going to create more division within our community.
You know, I actually think that this type of action that we're seeing here, I don't think it's a conflict of interest. Interestingly enough, with the feminist movement, I kind of feel like they asked for it. I mean, you know, it's like, I understand the need for, you know, equality in certain areas, but it's like at somewhere along the line in the feminist movement, things switched and it became very hostile towards men, and it became more about we are equal in every aspect. And I think people are getting kind of confused with the word equality when it comes to biology between men and women. We know that the biological makeup of a man and a woman, they're two different things.
Absolutely.
So generally speaking, you know, when it comes to strength and athletics and things of that nature, you're always going to see men on a higher tier than women. So when you've been spending all this time basically trying to erase men and men this, and we want this, and it's equal, we're equal, okay, there you go, you got it. Now he's breaking your jaw and he's stomping out your ovaries, and now you complaining? Let's be real. So it's like, listen, you got to know what you're asking for. So I think in a way, you know, I hate to say it that way, but it's kind of like the chickens coming home to roost. This is what you asked for. You ask for it, you're gonna get it.
Yeah. So going off that point, how can someone justify? How can they like, I guess at that point, you're kind of handicapped, right? You can't really speak out against it because you're saying, hey, we want to be equal. Hey, you know, trans women are women, so they should be allowed to play this. But you can't go back and say also women should be allowed to do X, Y, and Z, right? Like, because now you're saying trans women, biological men, we're all the same, right? Like,
right. There's no such thing as women anymore.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. Like this honestly, it sounds like we're getting to that point.
And that's what's crazy to me. And personally, I mean, I see, you know, from what I see, a lot of Black women are very upset with this. So I don't know so much about other communities, but I see a lot of Black women who are upset with this because I think a lot of them signed on to this feminist movement with the idea, with a different understanding of what it is. So now when it's coming to visit them in its true form, it's like, whoa, you know, can I return this? You know, you go to the store, you buy something, you're like, listen, can I return this? But no, there are always agendas. And I think we have to just look a little bit deeper than what's presented to us, you know, at face value. Because at the end of the day, any movement that is hostile against one group can never be considered a movement of equality and justice.
Absolutely. And I also, just as far as the athletics things go, because you guys know I work in sports and I talk a lot about sports. And one thing we have to really, for those who are saying like, you know, trans women should be allowed to participate in athletic events with biological women. Here's the thing, like, you can't just he used the example of someone who was failing, whether it's the middle school or high school or collegiate or whatever level, and saying, okay, I'm gonna decide to say I think and I want to be a woman and then go compete with the girls. Like, I don't think that should be allowed. Why? Because like he mentioned, there isn't enough science to prove that I can completely transform you into a woman, whether you want to be or not. Like, that there isn't enough science to do that, especially when you're of a certain age, and especially if you've only been taking said like, not testosterone, estrogen for so long, right? Like, it's, if you've only been taking estrogen for 3 weeks and saying, oh, I'm on medication or whatever to become a woman, that's not the same. Because as a man, When you are born a man, your body structure is completely different. You still have testosterone in your body, which is completely different. Your shoulder length and girth is completely different. You're like the muscle structure in your body, like it literally is science. Like this isn't something I'm making up. This isn't something I'm just rattling off or I'm trying to, convince you of something. This is the truth. Like this is what we've been known with. Like we've known this our entire lives, and now because we're trying to sway the argument in our direction, we're just wiping away all the scientific facts, not scientific opinions or theories, like actual facts. Like we're wiping all away and acting like that doesn't matter because we want to sway things in our opinion, and I don't think that's right. Like I don't think my little sister or my cousin or whatever should be able to compete with someone who is clearly bigger, stronger, faster than them, who is clearly should be competing with the next heat, which is the dudes. Like I mean, like that's just the truth.
And if you think about it, I mean, when they have to take, if you have to take like estrogen or these hormones, you got to take testosterone and all these. Aren't there rules against performance enhancement? Wouldn't that qualify as performance modification? It's not natural to the person's biological system. So I think that in itself, wouldn't that basically disqualify them in a normal world, outside of the twilight zone? So my question is, why can't let's say transgender people get their own leagues or their own sporting segment? I mean, why not do that? I mean, because they want you to change the definition of who you are to accommodate them. And that's the problem. You can define yourself however you want. And I want to make this clear. This is not about bashing the transgender community. And I hate the fact that I have to always attach that disclaimer, because I think personally that just panders to the lowest common denominator anyway. But at the end of the day, if you decide something for your life, that's your decision. But you do not have the right to make it my decision. So even with the example of my son, and the indoctrination, them telling him what to think and to basically deny. Think about this. First of all, it's an ELA class, English and Language Arts. Unless this is like LGBTQ education course curriculum, they had no business asking my son anything like that anyway. And I've already reached out to the school about it, and I'm waiting for a reply. But if they're going to, tell him to ignore science in one class, and then he goes to science class when he's taught biology about male and female, I don't understand. Like, what are you supposed to do as a child being educated? So think about the conflict that they're placing in these children's minds so young, so early. That's where we come in. So these sorts of conversations about gender fluidity and all of that other stuff, I think those conversations need to be taking place between parents and their children. Society, education system, politicians, all of you guys, stay out of it. That's between me and my family. When I close my doors, that's me and my family. You don't have the right to come barging in and telling me what to believe or how to think. And so it goes both ways. Do what you want, but don't try to force me to co-sign it or deny my eyes what I'm seeing. Is just not going to happen that way.
And also, brother, it seems like biology matters when it comes to trans men, which are women who transforms into men, because you don't really see trans men trying to compete in sports with men. Why? Because biologically, they're still women. They will lose. You don't see them trying to box us. You don't, and also when it comes to the bathroom issue, of course, I don't believe women should walk into a male's bathroom, but if it's a trans man and you don't know, because men generally, we are the stronger sex, we're not really threatened by a trans man walking into our bathroom. I'm not saying they should, but I'm just saying there's no threat as there is for a trans woman to walk into a woman's bathroom, because that person is biologically stronger than that woman. So it just seems like when it comes to biological argument, it doesn't apply to trans men. You don't see them behaving this way. It's like they understand their role. I don't understand why we don't understand the trans woman's role when it comes to women in general. Like, it just seems like that there's no They don't want to make a logical, scientific argument. Instead, they want to call us bigots and transphobes for even addressing it. And also, you know, even listening to this discussion, you will see people saying that this conversation is causing violence to trans women. The problem I have with this argument that violence towards trans women is, I don't know a black man, and I don't know if you guys know, but I don't know a heterosexual black man that wakes up and say, you know what, the first trans woman I see, I'm gonna kill them. Like, do y'all know black men like that? Do anyone know a black man like
trans? I'm sorry, I get so confused with the terms. Trans women.
Yeah.
It's a biological man.
A woman,
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know any heterosexual black men who are like, I want to kill a trans woman just because they're trans? So the problem I have, because what they like to do to kind of push their narrative and the victim of narratives is black trans women are dying. But there's no context. Why are they dying? Like we never answer that question. Are they dying is because they're going after heterosexual men and not telling heterosexual men that they're trans women like that? Because to be honest, if a heterosexual man is talking to a trans woman who looks like a woman, he's spending money. They may do some sexual things, you know, may not whatever, but they may do some sexual foreplay. And then he finds out that that's a trans woman. We don't know what happens to that man. But see, that conversation never takes place. It's just that black trans dies. You're not putting no context on it because black men aren't going out hunting trans women. We're just not. We're not even thinking about them. They're not like, I see trans women. I don't care. I swear I don't care. But don't force me to think like you, and stop saying that you're dying as if we're just hunting you. That's not the case. These things, you got to dig deeper into this.
Right. Language is very important.
Absolutely. So yeah, I guys, I've held you for long enough. I've held you for a very long time. This is an important conversation that needed to take place because it's a lot, and it's something that I think we're going to see a lot of over the next, potentially 8 years. Right, like if the Democrats continue to hold steady in the House, in the Senate, and in the presidency, this is something because we can no longer say the Proud Boys are coming to get us. We can no longer say you're a Trump supporter. We can no longer say those things because those things have magically is popped away. It's gone because Trump is out of office, and now it looks like they pull back on the Capitol stuff. The Capitol thing is over. The Proud Boys have now magically gone away. A lot of this stuff is not the subject. It's not election season, right? So it's not, those things are not at the forefront. And now that we're indoctrinated inside a Democratic ran government, then these are the issues that get brought up. And it's a lot of this transphobic, homophobic, all of these kind of rhetorics and topics, because now we have to stir up controversy, and now we have to break up different black folks from agreeing with each other and all being as a collective unit. But even if it's a contradiction of ourselves, especially when it comes to the world of the feminist movement and the world of sports and things like that, because it all kind of contradicts, even though Tony says it doesn't. And we're like, the lines are like super blurred on what's a woman, what's a man. Like we don't like, and what can we have gender reveal parties? Can we call it breastfeeding anymore? Now it's chest feeding. These aren't things I'm making up, guys. Like, these are literally things that are being put out in the media that we are now seeing. Like me, Tony, and Tariq are in the same group chat, and we see these things, these articles that are getting pushed and that are getting, pushed out there and saying trans women need love too, and all of these kind of things that are just like really being pushed right now. And so I want to end on this. Be sure, like I said, these aren't conversations you have in mainstream. So be sure to share, thumbs up to allow people to see this conversation, because these are things that need to be heard. And I want to get you guys just final thoughts on the entire issue. Like we covered a lot of topics, but if there's one thing in particular that you want to say before we get out of here, Tony, I'll allow you to go first. Just your final thoughts on everything.
Yeah, well, honestly, I just want the Black community in particular to just realize and understand that now that Donald Trump is out of office and the dust is settling, the Democratic Party is now in a position to show and prove who they are, because as they have a majority in all branches of government, there's no more room for excuses. So I just would encourage people to look at things with a critical eye and make sure that we're not being ignored. And I know there are a lot of people that make a lot of excuses for Joe Biden and the Democrats when things, don't really pan out the way that you expected. But we can't get into the habit of making excuses for people who are doing absolutely nothing for us when we're doing everything for them. So nothing in this conversation has been anti anything. It has been pro-Black, at least coming out of my mouth. And if you look at things through that lens, you'll understand and you'll see how we have been deprived and we have been disenfranchised. We've been disrespected repeatedly in this country. And at some point, we have to stop this. And we have to figure out a way of seeing things outside of the lens that has been provided for us. So right now, you're going to see a whole lot of other issues that are going to be thrown to the forefront under the new Democratic administration that are going to be about everything except us. So I encourage people to please utilize this time to engage in the conversations with the people that you're not used to having those conversations with, people that you've historically cut off, or you've kind of dismissed them as, oh, they're conservative or they're progressive, or have conversations with people who don't think like you, because that's the only way that we're going to get to a better common understanding of the situation that we currently find ourselves in. So to all the transgender people out there, LGBTQ, I ain't got nothing but love for you, but you do you, and let Black people do us. Because when it comes to transgender Black men or women or whatever you are, you're still Black at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to still have the same issues that the rest of us face. So it's not about choosing sides. Let's stop choosing sides and let's understand who's targeting us and what are the things that they're benefiting. How are they benefiting from our collective dysfunction?
Tariq, go ahead. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I really just want to, jam this into Black people's heads. Please stop using your suffering to aid other groups. As you see the LGBT community getting all these powers, all these laws passed in their favor, you see the immigrant community, the same thing. You're still left in the exact same situation. You are the only one being an ally. Nobody else is being an ally. You don't see these other groups saying, okay, you know what? Black people showed out and turned up for you, Joe Biden. So instead of you worrying about our issues, why don't you do something for them first? Okay. You were not even a part of the 100-day plan, Black people. You're not a part of no executive orders, that you are out here fighting for these other issues while still suffering the same social economical issues as the rest of your people. It doesn't matter if you are gay or straight. So please, we have to have a B1 Black agenda first. These issues are designed to keep us divided and destroy the Black family. You see what's going on with our community, where we don't have men in the homes. We got apartments, Section 8 places where it's just rowdy. Everyone's fighting. There's no man leading, no man breaking it up. We have no institutions. The other thing is these gender issues are really just designed just to keep us divided. We cannot come together on terms that brings Black people together. Like, let's talk about education in the Black community. Why aren't we talking about education in the Black community? Why aren't we talking about ways to build economic wealth in the Black community? We can't talk about that because we're stuck on these cultural issues. This is what the Democrats are doing, because if they get rid of these cultural issues, like Brother Tony said, you have to have policies. They don't want to deliver you policies. And Black people should be offended. In my personal opinion, we should be offended that we're being ignored, because these people begged for our votes. They said that Biden cannot win with our votes. They said this was the most important election to get rid of this white supremacist who was going to destroy this country. They needed us to come out and show out, yet they ignore us. That should not be tolerated. So that's all I want to say. Black people, please hold these people accountable. Do not lend yourself out to these other groups and focus on you.
That's right.
No, absolutely. The B1 mindset is for sure. That is what we all need to take place. Just my final thoughts, just to kind of piggyback off what Tariq said. You see a lot of these things, this transophobia thing that's being pushed right now. You see the attack on the Asian community being pushed right now. All of these issues have to deal with all of these different people, except the people that they were running to, that they were crying to come get your booty to the polls, more than a vote. All of these things were geared towards us, right? It was geared towards us putting them in office. And now that they're in office and have those positions, now we don't get a say on anything. Only thing we get a say on is supporting the Asian cause, supporting the transphobia, like to eliminate transphobia. Like we have to support other people's causes, but we're not getting our causes and our issues looked at, right? Like, remember Ice Cube said Joe Biden's supposed to have this meeting with him, but at last I checked, it hasn't happened. He said he would take it when he would get in office. You said, hey, we would make sure that you guys get X, Y, and Z if you put me in office. And last I checked, Biden's been in office over a month, and none of those things have come true or even been to the forefront. The only thing that we've gotten so far and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, or Tony or Tariq, the only thing that I've seen is that we will study reparations. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to discuss it. We're not going to make sure it happens. We're going to study it. Offensive. Even though all the studying has already been done. So that is what. So when we talk about issues like this, gender identity or gender wars that are taking place, they're trying to put us to the forefront. And I want to say this. I know I'm kind of going long-winded, but we talked about athletics in particularly. And if you look at some of those lawsuits against like the biological men that are competing in the sports with the women and like dominating, especially up in Connecticut and particularly, the biological men are black. And that's not by accident that they're putting those guys at the forefront of those racing events. They're the ones that are kicking everybody's tail in the girl sports, and they're black. And you see their picture, and you see them on the news, and you see them like saying, hey, I'm getting discriminated against or whatever. So I don't think that's by accident. Maybe call me crazy, but I just don't think so. So we have to, like you said, put ourselves first and really realize that nobody's going to take care of us unless we take care of ourselves first. So that's all I have to say. Tony, do you have something? Yes.
Yeah. Just one quick thing about the reparations issue. I just want people to realize that when it comes to other groups, they get policy, they get action, they get tangibles. But whenever it comes to the Black community, we always get panels that are going to study some stuff. So that's like you go into the person that beat you up, and you said, "Listen, I've gotten so much damage. I've had $50,000 in medical bills. Can you help me pay this?" And then you say, "But so why don't you just go home and you decide for yourself how much you think you're responsible for this, and let me know if you think that you should even do anything about it." Like, we're giving them the power to decide whether they are at fault and whether they should even do anything, to provide some type of restitution. So I just think that's crazy. Everybody else gets tangibles and we get studies. So you're not getting anything.
It's insane, guys. Well, thank you, brother, so much, Mr. Tony. Be sure to follow these brothers because they put out a lot of great content. Tony is in the film circuit. He's in the stock market, and also he's always B1. And Tariq is a great mind, a great thinker, and he's not afraid to put out his opinion at all. Neither one of these brothers are. So be sure to follow them. Their handles right there. Thank you guys for joining us so much. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button on your way out and share this video because, like I said, these are conversations that need to be taught, that need to be heard because they're not something that you see all the time. So thank you guys for joining us once again. This is the Black Boss Channel.